Chapter 2 Intermission. An ambulance rushed its patient to the hospital attached to the Tokyo University of Electronical and Computer Engineering. They were found unresponsive in their apartment. The emergency room quickly routed them to the ICU, where they now lie in a deep coma. Their vital signs are low, but within normal levels. An extensive examination of the brain would likely yield no outward signs of injury or trauma. The patient is in a fine physical shape. The patient was seeing a therapist and prescribed medication, but there was zero indication of an overdose. For all intents and purposes, the patient was in an inexplicable coma. What an unfortunate turn of events, Professor Ryusenji said, looking at his student. Several hours prior, Ryusenji received word from Eiji that Leon had crossed over the airline and was now lost. Eiji said it was his fault, that he was also mind-linked but managed to return alive. Eiji didn't know Leon's address, so contacted the professor, desperate to get Leon any help he could. Ryusenji called an ambulance and led them into the apartment, for which he had a key since it had been arranged in his name. There they found Leon unresponsive and transported him to the Tokyo Electricals Hospital. Leon was officially DMIA. There was no way to return his consciousness to his body. It was forever fused to the digicore of his partner Digimon. "Did you ever meet Yuling, Leon?" Professor Ryusenji said idly to himself, trying to piece things together. He knew he'd have to tell the police, and given the circumstances, the Digipolice, everything he knew. Leon was an American and the son of a scholar who was aware of the digital world. That would create its own complications. This was about the worst possible thing that could happen in the course of digital world research. Professor Ryusenji picked up the Digimon linker that the doctors had removed from Leon during surgery and put it back on his wrist. "You know one too many lies, I'm afraid," he said softly to Leon. He looked up at one of the many monitors tracking Leon's vitals and watched as the line tracking his pulse weakly registered in jagged bleeps across the screen. Eiji might as well have blacked out after he told Professor Ryusenji that Leon was DMIA. He curled up on the futon in the loft of his tiny apartment, periodically screaming or yelping as the anxiety and creeping dread built up inside him. He had to win, he had told himself. He willed his victory into existence, only to watch as it crumbled into utter defeat. He digivolved, only to lose. He reached the ultimate level and was betrayed by a power he could not control. The person he threatened to trample over on his way to the top had sacrificed himself to protect him from a royal knight, an avatar of death. Leon wasn't coming back. His consciousness had crossed over from the real world into the digital world. Leon's body was recovered and was now in a coma, a sleep from which he would never wake. Eiji could scream his name all he wanted, but Leon would never hear it. Whether Leon was in this world or the next, spiritually speaking, was immaterial. For all intents and purposes, he was dead. He'd passed through the firewall, never to return. Kazuchimon and Pulsemon were gone too, lost for all eternity. Even if they were lucky enough to escape from the Royal Knight's clutches, Leon's consciousness was a permanent part of their digicore now. No one had ever naturally recovered from being DMIA, as Professor Ryusenji made clear to Eiji many times over. Eiji let Leon die, That's what it amounted to. He'd spent all this time sharpening his codecracker skills, but in the end, it wasn't enough to save anybody. It's my fault. I killed Leon, A.G. whimpered. His insides lurched. He threw his hand up to cover his mouth, clattered down the ladder from the loft, and flew into the toilet. He hastily flipped the lid up and vomited pure bile and stomach acid into the grimy toilet. His mouth burned, but he didn't even have the energy to wash the bitter taste out of his mouth. Your Digimon Linker readings are a mess, A.G., Lugamon scolded, looking down from the loft. Lugamon was strangely healthy and upbeat given the circumstances. There had been no catastrophic damage to their Digicore, which was fortunate. The only hit they'd taken in battle was the blast from that Royal Knight's cannon, a blow their Berserk ultimate form took in stride. I can't do this anymore, A.G. said weakly. Eventually, his heart and mind would heal. Screaming and gnashing his teeth would just leave him too tired to move. He picked up the Digimon Linker and put it back on his wrist. Hey, keep that on! That's why I live! Lugamon barked. Codecrackers, mindlings, digivolutions. What good is any of it? I pushed you too hard, put us in harm's way, and now Leon's gone. All because of me. This isn't the victory I wanted. A notification sound drew A.G.'s attention to the Digimon Linker. A text message from Tartarus. Excellent work. You're a hero of the SOC. The congratulatory message was a dagger in A.G.'s heart. He gave the SOC what they wanted. They told him to punish the hacker Judge by any means he saw fit, and he did just that. Judge would no longer interfere with SOC affairs, and no other hackers would dare mess with them either. A.G. was a hero. He'd done exactly as Professor Ryosenji asked. He'd infiltrated the upper echelons of the SOC to the point where they trusted him with sensitive information. That led him to fight Leon in retaliation. He had to make an example of him. He'd succeeded by every measure and failed by every measure. He should be DMIA right now, not Leon. He didn't know what the Royal Knight Digimon was or what it wanted, but it was very clearly fixated on A.G. and Lugamon during the fight. What's causing you to vomit? Lugamon asked, jumping down from the loft. The pain. Emotional pain. Why are you in pain? He was my friend, Lugamon. My best friend. And he fell into the vortex while he was mindling to Kazuchimon. I don't know what happened to him. No one does. Yeah, and it's my fault. It's all my fault! A.G. wailed. There were no laws pertaining to people involved in DMIA incidents. A.G. wouldn't be arrested for putting Leon in a coma, but the Digipolice were likely to have questions. They probably wouldn't try to blame any one person for what the codecrackers were doing in the digital world. The codecrackers certainly wouldn't try to pin it on anyone, but there was blame to be placed, and A.G. decided he would shoulder it. You know, I just remembered something, A.G. said, his voice raw and hoarse. What? Lugamon said, sitting on the floor with a marked thud. We've got something in common. Neither of us can clearly remember. I went to play with Leon down by the river once. I was with my family. We had a barbecue on the riverbank. Did you grill meat? Oh, I'm hungry, Lugamon said. Eiji realized he hadn't yet fed Lugamon today. We played in the river while our parents got this barbecue stuff set up. I ended up in a pretty deep part of the river, I guess. Leon told me as much. Our parents called us in for food, but when I tried to swim back, something grabbed my leg. Eiji went under and was swept away by the current. He figured he was only underwater for a few seconds, but it was long enough to catch a glimpse of what lay below. He could see through the exceptionally clear water straight down to the riverbed, but it was a long, long way down. He was immediately filled with dread. So, what happened? Obviously, you wouldn't be there if you drowned. Lugamon yipped impatiently. Leon grabbed hold of my arm further downstream. It was sheer luck that I had washed down to a shallow spot where he could grab me and stay on his feet. We both laughed it off with a "that was close." Our parents hadn't even noticed I'd nearly been swept away. Eiji would later see on the news that another kid, also of elementary school age, drowned at that very same river. I was just a step away from death, Eiji said quietly. Thankfully, Leon had been there to save him once again. Eiji, listen. What? Eiji asked, still prone on the floor in front of the toilet bowl, not bothering to lift his head. I opened this. Opened what? Oh, that. Eiji said, lifting his gaze to the small package of data Pulsemon gave to Lugamon at the DDL cafe. Eiji reached up and flushed the toilet. They'd both left the package alone, fearing anything that came from a hacker might contain a virus. It's food! Look! Lugamon said happily. A barrel of meat wrapped around a bone, straight out of a comic book or video game, sat inside the box. It definitely looked like the sort of thing Lugamon would eat. Yeah, looks like it was a normal present after all, huh? Eiji said warily. It looks delicious! There's a message here too. Pulsemon wrote you a note? Eiji thought about Pulsemon, Kazuchimon, falling through the vortex. What became of them? It says, let's meet up again soon. Eiji let out a small gasp. Pulsemon really did want to be friends with Lugamon. Eiji, Lugamon said softly. What? I think I might know why I went berserk when I digivolved into Lugamon. Will you hear me out? You what? Eiji said, looking down at Pulsemon. I really wanted another chance to fight Pulsemon. They constantly looked down on me, and it was really getting to me. I wanted to get the better of them, and maybe I would have lost. But after I got that extra strength from them... What strength? Eiji said, stopping Lugamon. Well, you get better when you take on someone stronger than you. I wanted to keep fighting and then have another conversation with Pulsemon, and I think they wanted the same thing. That's why they gave me this food. They obviously wanted to have another bout and then have some food. Lugamon said as they tore into the meat, jaws working overtime to keep from dropping Annie onto the floor. So, when I digivolved and went feral, I think it's because you didn't quite feel the same way, Lugamon said, jowls smacking together. You really wanted to get one over on... this meat is absolutely incredible. Eiji didn't have a response for that. Here he was, taking life lessons from his Digimon, who was more mature than he was. He and Leon could have celebrated their 20th birthdays over drinks in Japan. That would have been fun. You know, I think Pulsemon and I were friends, Lugamon said as they licked the bone clean. Sure, if you think so. Why not? Eiji said, stuffing his head back in the toilet. He couldn't bear to face himself in the mirror. Eiji? Lugomon said tentatively. All the emotions welled up inside Eiji, who began openly weeping, his nose soon opening up and mixing with the tears. Do you want to save your friend, Eiji? Lugomon asked. Of course I do. It's my fault he's gone. Eiji wanted to be the one to reach out and pull Leon out of the digital world, just as Leon had pulled him out of the river all those years ago. I want to save my friend Pulsmon too, Lugomon said solemnly. You said it yourself. Friends are the people you want to go out of your way to help, even if it hurts you. Lugomon. Eiji heaved between sobs. We'll save them, even if it means facing down that royal knight. We play on hard mode for our friends.